everyone. Okay, now I can see myself. Okay, I see you guys are joining, yeah, thank you for joining us. Sorry, it's been a bit of a weird startup there. Uh, just explaining what happened. Something that happened once in the past year as well. Basically, in the system we use for those streamings, you have a button to basically start the stream and one to go in direct. And this button has a tiny delay. So when you click on it to start play, like start the direct, it goes into the next position, which would be stop the direct with a 3 seconds delay or something like this. And because of that, I felt like I didn't click on it and I re-clicked, which means it stopped the streaming. The problem is that when this happens, it means the streaming is gone, right? So that's basically what happened. And so I had to reset up. Luckily, I just basically had to copy paste all the info quickly. It took me a few minutes, but that's basically what happened here. So sorry about that. Everything should be working as intended. I'm just checking here that we have the correct chat popping up, but it should be the case. And yeah, I'm just waiting to see that my message is popping up there and that everything is working as intended. And then we'll be able to start the stream. I'm just waiting a few minutes more than usual, just in case, because I want to make sure that everyone has the time to catch up. So that's, you know, the most important part here. I'm just rechecking if the chat is the correct one because yeah, it should be now the correct one. Okay. So I don't know why it is not updating in here, but it does updates in here. Okay. Just a second. Okay, I think that should work. Yes. Okay. Now I have the setup for it to work. Perfect. Okay, thank you guys for those of you that joined us. I didn't see yet who was joining. So if you want to say hi in the chat so I know who's there, who's watching us, that would be ideal. And without further ado, we will be starting this fight night. For today, we'll start with the easy and medium fight. And there's not that many players in there this week, which makes a lot of sense because a lot of you went directly for the more hardcore version, which makes sense. The army that I have today is the one that I had last week, which is not amazing by any means. So it's your opportunity to go and grab those better rewards, and that's definitely something you should do, right? Hey, Yosif, I see that you're here. Welcome to the stream. Oh, I see that we have Matrema as well. Welcome. We will be able to start now that I see more people joining. So let's start right away. Everything is set up. Just checking that the event is live, and that's the case. So we should be starting. We will be starting with Pannekoek. We will have Gustav, Mario, and then we start to go into um, the names that are in Cyrillic, I guess. So either Russian or Ukrainian or this kind of countries, and that means I have no idea how to pronounce them. So I'm going to stop there, and we'll be basically starting with our fight night for the day. So the easy and medium one, it will be super fast. I guess we'll go very quickly into the more advanced one. Okay, guys. So how are you doing? We have quite a few things that we'll be discussing today. We had our last chat only last week since there were a few weeks in the meantime without any streams. And I know that quite a lot of you would vote for the opportunity to have it right after. I know you guys, I know how you are. And that makes perfect sense. That's perfectly fine by me as well. So that's why we have two streams in a row. technically that's because we had none for a couple of weeks before that. Okay, so on my list of things I wanted to touch on today, there are a few different topics. The first one will be regarding what was just shared in the announcements, like what was it, like an hour ago or something like this? Yeah, a bit more than an hour ago, mentioning the weekends events that we will have. So it's not really the weekend this time; it starts already tomorrow, and it's the Wagen Extravaganza. So what the Wagen Extravaganza is, following the trends that we've been trying for 3 weeks in a row now, we are trying to give you guys something a bit different for the weekend. And this one is focused on wagons. So it means you will have ERA wagons offers available for gems every single day for the next 3 days. And those will be discounted. Obviously, that's the point of such an event, but also they will be themed, meaning that you will have one day where you will get everything related to this and that era. Then the next day it will be this and that era, and the last day will be this and that era. I'm not telling you which era. You will figure out that as they go, but that's basically the plan. You know, every era will be having its time in the spotlights, and we will also be discounting the current era, so the Age of Divination um, wagons as well. So that's what you will be seeing in this weekend. Again, that's the kind of things, you know, we started with the gold um, extravaganza. We've had the uh, we've had the what was the artifact extravaganza, which was the one on which there's definitely some tweaks to do. Uh, or we had the Eternite one, which I know, you know, not everything was perfect, but there's been a lot of positive feedback about this one last weekend. And so this is the Wagen extravaganza. We have a few more in the pipeline. And then the point is going to be to rotate this system, not necessarily every single weekend. It's just that right now we want to test them to see what sticks, what is actually um, making sense, and what is beneficial to the players and to the game economy as well, because that's one of the reasons why we go for this system. But yeah, we will be having a few more. I'm trying to see. Yeah, we are midway through. We'll have a few more going on, and then they will start to rotate again, um, one after the other. Again, I'm not sure that it will be every single weekend because that might be a bit too much. But the idea is to, you know, have things that are a bit different, especially when we're talking about offers or resources to be used. So that's mostly what we're looking at right now. Um, there is also something that will change. There are a few changes coming quite soon that we've been talking with you for a bit of time as well. But one that will come quite soon will be regarding the season pass. So it's not what we mentioned earlier, like a new layer of the season pass, etc. It's just that it will evolve to be better suited with the fact that we want to include the global red boss once it will be not in beta anymore. We want to have it in the roadmap of events, or the rotation of events. So in order to do that, we need to slightly alter the season pass, but also there are a few things we wanted to change there. So you will be getting more detail on that rather soon, and there will be that would probably be like the first step of many to come, because as we said in the past, we have a lot of things we would like to do with the season pass to make it more attractive, more challenging, and more rewarding. Basically, there's three different aspects. You know, it should be more attractive to get more people to go for it. It should be more challenging, because right now the top challenge is not necessarily on par with the state of the game anymore, but it should also be more rewarding. So that's the different aspects we will be working on, and it will probably take a few iterations to be able to do that. So yeah, that's one of the topics I wanted to touch on. I'm checking, but I think it's, yeah, we have just one player left already for the easy fights. So we will be going right into the core of the fight night in just a minute. I think I'm not even sure that I won one of those battles, to be honest. Okay, that's another defeat. That's fine. And this is the last one, so I'm gonna stop right there, and we'll be able to go. So I'm just rechecking in case there's any question or anything that is popping up, because for whatever reason the chat sometimes doesn't want to update as it should, so it's not always ideal there. Let me close the event, get those guys their rewards, and we'll be moving to the other account. Let me do that. So yeah, again, for those that joined after I explained it, I wanted to apologize for the rookie mistake I did, because it's the second time that I had to change the entire setup for the stream, or just recopy paste everything before starting, and it's a bit stupid, like the reason why. But yeah, that's something that happens. It's entirely because of the software we use for the streams, and a little latency that it has with one of the options when you start the streams. It's basically showing start the stream, you click on it, and then there's like 2 seconds, 3 seconds of delay before it shows the next option, which will be to stop the stream. And so I clicked on it. I didn't see the change. I forgot about this delay. I felt like it didn't work. So I re-clicked on it, and it was too late. I cut the the event. The funny thing is that it means that um, I will have to go and delete a YouTube video of like 3 seconds or something like this, um, before before it's spreading out too much, basically. So yeah, we're starting with King Elric. We will then have Praetor, Deathly Hallows, Valdarians, Skarsgård, Matremar, Roger, Salje, the Ack, Black Hat, Randu. That's for the 10 first players, pretty much, that we will be having today. We have a bit less than usual today. I guess it's because we had one just last week. But yeah, I mean, it's the guys that we are used to are here, so that's the best part. Okay, so yeah, the next topic I wanted to cover will be the global red bars, because I know that there are still quite some questions and thoughts about it. I just want to reiterate that at this point, this is still a beta event that needs to be tweaked and needs to be improved a fair bit. So with this iteration, we worked mostly the elf, because we did not necessarily have time to work a lot more elements. But I can tell you already that with the next iterations, we will have more changes. Most likely, in terms of rewards, um, we will be adding some Probably cosmetics. So I don't know yet if it's gonna be titles or if it's gonna be portraits, banners, skins, whatever. But there will be some more interesting rewards coming in there. Hey Nappy, welcome. And then we will slowly have more. Um, we will slowly have more iterations where we are improving on the event. A few different things we are working on at the moment, just for the initial version of the event, will be to fix the leaderboard issue. So, as you know, right now, the leaderboard is based on, well, you have two leaderboards. The one for the number of tries is number of keys used is working as intended, but the one for the total damage is based on your total damage, which is kind of the initial point, except that it shows you the numbers for the top 10 fights that you had, top 10 tries. It's the same mechanism that you have in the clan reds, but the reason why it's a problem is because this means the way the leaderboard is displayed at the moment, you can have players that are above you in the rankings but have a lower number shown to their name, so you might not understand why are they in front of me then. So that's something we're working on. And I know some people would have liked for us to basically only use the top 10 tries to reward the players. It might come. It's something we are looking at. Yeah, we're working at that as a potential extension of the event, but for the time being, it will be it will be based on the global um, damages, simply because otherwise it's gonna need more development just to run. So the idea is more to add on to the existing than to restart or rebuild it from scratch. Technically, plus what we've seen in the first few events is that anyway the top of the leaderboard is not exactly the same between the amount of tries and the actual um, best damage dealt. So that's still making those two leaderboards interesting. What will most likely happen, as I was saying, is either we'll add another leaderboard that goes only for, you know, maybe the best try or the two best tries or the five best tries, etc. That's a possibility. The other possibility we might go for is a title that we would give out to the best try or something like this. So I'm not sure yet if it's going to be taking the shape of an actual ranking or if it's going to be taking the shape of an achievement um, where basically the person that gets the top prize is getting the the title, a bit like the season titles are working, even though the season titles are also based on on an actual ranking. But you see what I mean. You don't need to wait until the end to get it. So yeah, that's something that might be happening indeed. Not sure exactly if it would be thanks to a ranking or a different system. Um, and then we're still looking into how we will develop the event from there. But that's mostly the things that will come very soon. It's fixing the leaderboards, uh, getting way better rewards in, better fine tuning the strength of the boss as well. Those are the first things that will come. Once all of this is there, most likely that's when we will move away from the beta of the event and turn it into an actual real event. But that's something we still need to look into and decide how it's going to go. And then after that, there are a few different things we're working on to make the game a bit more exciting for players, and those are long requested changes that many players asked us to look into. So one topic that is very important for us right now are artifacts. I'm not going to explain again what we would like to do with artifacts because you guys know pretty much about it at this point. That our main um, the main thing we are trying to do would be to get new levels of artifacts and redistribute the existing levels so that depending on the artifacts, some of those artifacts will get a real buff if you reach the final level because some of those artifacts are not strong enough. Some other artifacts that are already super strong, like the spare, etc., would probably not get any buffs, like the new level 10 or level 15 or whatever the new levels would be. The new max level would probably not get a higher stat than what currently is here, and we will just better distribute it. There might be new attunements added, so like a fourth one or something like this to still push player to go for it and chase those artifacts. But we already discussed about that and what's the main direction we would like to go there. Something different though that we start to toy around with, it's just an idea for now, and I'd like to hear your feedback on this, is something that we could name relics, just to make a reference to artifacts, but it's the idea of having debuffs, um, passive debuffs that you would have as a player. Technically, what I mean by this is that just like you can pick 3 artifacts, you would have passive debuffs that you are upgrading along the way that would allow you to reduce the effect of your opponent's artifacts. So why would that be interesting? Of course, such a mechanism would have to be capped so that I don't know what would be the number, but probably even maxing out this new um, system, so those relics or whatever we would call them, would not allow you to reduce the effect of an artifact by more than 50%, for example. And most likely you would only be acting on one effect of the artifacts. If we take the spare, for example, maybe you will only be reducing the number of meteorites, or maybe you will only act on how often they crash, right? So it's not exactly the same thing, but you would be acting on one of those, but you could only lower it by 50% of what your opponent has at the max, for example, or something like this. The reason why it would be interesting is because that would slightly give back, um, it would give you the option to put back some emphasis on power stones, because one of the things that is happening right now is that artifacts are so important that a lot of players are using power stones as a way to debuff artifacts, right? And if you add passive debuffs, that could allow you to also strategically shift your focus, because you would work on um, you would already have the effects you want on artifacts thanks to your relics or whatever that the name would be, which would mean you can then shift the focus you have for your power stones and use them differently. The other reason why it would be interesting is that it would give something different as well to chase for players than just focus forever on the artifacts. Uh, but also, it would add a bit of strategy as well, because if you are only focusing on your artifacts, you are potentially going to face people that are focused way more on the debuff, and especially the debuff for the artifacts that you are using and are not, and then it's not really good for you. So that's something we want to look into. As I said, for now it's an idea we're toying with. I see, Joseph, that you're saying that it could be interesting if we do it without breaking the whole game. I mean, of course, any such system, we have to make sure we do it without breaking the whole game, right? It wouldn't make sense otherwise. But the reason why we are um, quite confident that this could be done is because technically some of the passive buffs that we put to the bosses work in kind of such a way, pretty much. What I mean by this is that by working on the global raid boss, we discovered that we could have something like a power stone that is applied to your entire army. And that's pretty much what those debuffs would be. Maybe that's actually an easier way to describe it. It's imagine a power stone that you apply to your entire army, but it's not going to be getting reset every season or anything like this. I mean, maybe it could, I don't know, but just think about the general mechanism of the power stone, and imagine something that you apply to your entire army. That's uh, that's something we think could be quite interesting to to go with. So we're toying with this idea a bit at the moment. Another thing that we are trying to think about. Wait, just before I move on to that, to answer to the second part of what you were saying, Joseph, it would not necessarily be the equivalent of having 6 artifacts because we do not know yet how many of those you could have. Technically, you could have passive effects for all the artifacts, right? And I'm not sure that you would have to pick which one you go fight with. Which, for the offensive power of the artifacts, we need to limit it. But for the debuffs, if we limit it and if we say, hey, you have only 3 options you can go for, then the likeliness that you are facing those exact 3 artifacts every single time is pretty low, which means you would potentially never really make the best out of those relics or whatever we would call them, which is why it might be something where the entire pool is available for you all the time. What would then differ and make it not too powerful as a tool is that, as I was saying earlier, we would limit how strong the debuff can be so that the artifact will always have an advantage. So if, let's say, you can reduce by 20% the speed for the spare of your opponent, it's good, but your opponent will still have the 80% of that artifact, right? So it would have to be capped in a way that there's always a benefit to the offense, since the offense has to pick between 3 artifacts and the defense has the entire pool to defend itself. So that's roughly what we can think of right now. But again, maybe that could be working the way you think about and be kind of like, you know, another layer of artifacts as well. It's something we need to further look into. And yeah, so what I was saying is that the second way we are looking into this is to potentially have new types of units. I think we already touched on that a little last time, but since we will reach the 100 units somewhere this year, we want to consider what we'll do after that. And last time we discussed about this idea of potentially um, restricting what units are available within one specific era or one specific season, etc. That's one possibility. The other thing that we're looking at right now is to have a different type of units that would have an entirely different rarity, because that would be a unit that you can only have one of, and that would have way more abilities. So that would be kind of your hero. So that's something we're looking into as well. So yeah, Joseph, actually, you're getting pretty close to what we had in mind. Um, your idea was to create a new set like the artifacts and put them into the normal bosses. And what we are looking at potentially, once the event would be fully the way we want it to be, it could be that they are actually part of the global red boss, and because this way, the idea would be to make what we call a game loop, meaning that you need to do the clan reds to get your artifacts to be maxed, and then you can fight to um, make use of those artifacts. We want to potentially mimic this system by saying you need to participate to a certain extent, obviously, to the global red boss to get these relics that you will then use in the regular fight. So that could be a way to make it work. That being said, it will depend on when the event is ready, fully ready, how much people are actually playing it. As you know, I didn't mention it earlier, but some of the other stuffs we're working on right now, which could be linked to that, is that we're working on adding more achievements to the game and more quests in general. But we're also planning to do that for the global red boss, right? So if you have achievements that are linked to it, to the event, so that means some of the rewards could be to get those relics. And so if you were to do it this way, um, then the global red would be a lot more interesting, because the problem right now is that it's not making um, it's not making sense to do it the way we currently. Okay, I'm trying to. Sorry, I got lost a bit in the way in what I wanted to say, because I was reading the questions at the same time. The the thing is, right now, as you said, Josef, and you're completely right. Right now, it would make no sense to have relics or something like this in the global red boss as it stands right now. But if uh, you have an event that is granting rewards for participating, pretty much a bit like the clan reds are doing, where basically no one is questioning whether it makes sense to use a few keys in the clan reds. Everyone goes for it because that's why you have the artifacts and because that's a clan activity. If the rewards were worth it, if the event um, had achievements, etc., and not just the ranking for the top 100, potentially the same could apply to the to the to the GRB. That's what I meant. Of course, as you said, it only makes sense if it's not about putting too much resources, and that's why I'm saying that such a thing could not happen if it was only, the current ranking, which is like the top 100, and then that's it. But if the event was not just the rankings, but you add actual achievements within the event itself, like an achievement for dealing X amount of damage, an achievement for for having X amount of tries, for attacking the boss in the different phases, or something like this, then suddenly it becomes an event that everyone can really benefit from and get rewards from. So that's something we we are thinking of. But again, as I said, this relic system, it's something we're just really starting to think about. So it's not something that would come anytime soon, most likely, and it will need a lot of thoughts on our side for this. To comment on your comments, Matt Remar. Sorry, it's a bit weird to say to comment on your comments, but to answer to the points you were making about making units available or unavailable. I don't know if you watched the stream where we're discussing this. What you described is one of the options. So one of the options we were saying is buff and nerfs of specific units. Uh, and as you said, that's something the Twisted Curse event already does. The reason why we are also thinking about potentially at one point limit the pool of units available for specific seasons or something like this is simply because there will be a point where there will be so many units that there would be no need for new units, or rather new units will never be successful. The problem is that units are a big driver for the game. And so if we reach that point where we have, 100 units is one thing. Having 150, 200 units way down the line, that wouldn't work, right? There's a point where it won't work. And so one of the ideas was, hey, if we add a smaller pool of units, and that could happen in many different ways. One way you could think about it is say, hey, for each era, you start with the first season you have I don't know 60% of the units available. Second season it goes to 75. Third season you have 90%, and the final season you have all of them available. That's one way to do it. Another way to do it is to say every era we pick 80 units that you can get you use, and that excludes some of them from there. Uh, that's something we could be doing. As I said, your idea of making buffs and nerfs era specific, that's also something we're working with. The main reason why it could lead to an issue is that if you think about the number of units ever growing, it won't really fix that issue that at one point, that would mean for every single new era, you need to retouch 150 units balancing, for example. Or, even right now, that would already be 100 units. And touching 100 units balancing every single era, it's going to be a lot of work, but also it's a room for errors because, it's a lot harder. Like when we do the twisted curse, it's simple because we only do a few units that we really buff. So that's something we have to look into. Also, the other part is that right now with the Grand Show event or the Twisted Curse, players like it because it's 1 week in the era, right? If it was to happen with this drastic effect for an entire era, I don't know what would be the feedback. Maybe it would not be um, as interesting players. So that's something we need to figure out. But that's an option to do it this way as well. Um, that's something we have to see. As I was mentioning in that discussion, the reason why we're bringing that up is mostly because at one point we will just have too many units, and that means a lot of units will never get used. And if you have this pool of units that you can that is changing with every era, there are a few things that comes from there. The first one is it pushes people to keep on upgrading all their units and not just the ones they are using, because at one point you need to rethink your strategy. Some of the units you would like would not be there. So that's something we're looking into. And yeah, Matt Remar, that's very true what you're saying for the artifacts. That's something we could do as well, and that we're looking to, and that would address getting the eras more specific. But it doesn't address the other part of the issue, which is that there will be a point where there's so many units that a vast majority of those units will just never be used, or very rarely by few players. But also, new units will be harder and harder to create because we can have new ideas, we can fiddle around new concepts, but the number of units that really get adopted by players is very small because they already cover their needs with most of the units, right? So that's why we're thinking about this. But again, that's really not something set in stone or whatsoever. It's just different possibilities we're considering. That's how I would best describe it. We're thinking about what we can do to twist the the gameplay a little, especially addressing some of the issues that are there. As you know, there's the one we mentioned earlier with the artifacts, and there's also this element with different units. But as I was saying earlier, having a new rarity of unit could also be a solution, because that could mean, hey, past the 100 units, we are not adding any new units to the game like basic one. We are only adding these super rare units that you can only have one of in your army, and is kind of your army leader, for example, or whatever that would be. Um, the, you could even potentially think about this as a link to what we were saying earlier, that this relics system, it could be basically that you just have this one unit that can get those very specific power stones, or however we want to name it, and that's the one that will get all those more powerful and more efficient debuffs, for example. So there are ways we can think about that. But that's just some of the things we are exploring and considering for the time being. As for the artifact change for an entire era, um, that's something we've been thinking about for a while. The main reason why it was not done so far is because you have a lot of players that uh, yeah, the you'd have the how can I phrase that? You would probably piss off quite some players that basically have leveled up an artifact that would get heavily nerfed. If they only focused on that artifact, they would potentially be screwed for an entire era, right? If we do our rework of artifacts in a way that it's more progressive in the progression for the artifacts, and players feel progress more than with the current system, maybe that could get better. But yeah, that's one thing we need to consider. Also, the other part is that we have quite a few. We only have quite a few artifacts that are really powerful, and the others are pretty weak at the moment. So we would anyway need to get these artifacts rework done before we can do something like this. Otherwise, it would always be the same. We have to nerf because we would just not be able to buff them, right? Think about the spare. It would be pretty tough to have an entire Hydra where we buff it. Uh, that would probably not go down too well with the players. So Matt, Rima, you were saying, yeah, if we made a different class of units that you could only have one of, that might be interesting. You'd have to choose one of 4 or 5 options and could have only one of them at any given time. That's precisely the idea that, I see them as a bit like the hero or the leader that you have in different games. And that could be quite interesting. Um, the the idea being that you could have different strategies around this, because you will have people that will pick uh, like if we link those heroes to the relics kind of system. I was just thinking about that as we speak, right? So I'm just brainstorming with you guys right now. The idea that we could mix this idea of a unique hero kind of units and the relics kind of system is that you would have to decide if you want to have a hero that will be kind of a defense in a way. So you use the buffs that are going to act in the best possible way against the builds that are good against yours. That's one way to do it. And the other way to do it is to be all in and say, no, I'm going to use the buffs or debuffs or however that would work that are going to further enhance the type of build that I already have. And it works or it doesn't, but it will be even more efficient when it does work. So you would have some different strategy going on there. But that's something we can look into. The the thing is, if we were to work mm, with with ideas like that, it's we can go in many different ways, right? If there's some debuffs that are applied by the general of your army or the hero of whatever we want to call it, we have to see how we limit it. We have to see if those deals are, as we were saying earlier, like artifacts related, or are we just giving them general buff or debuff? Uh, that's something to see. And ultimately, we could even we also have to think: are they actually going to be on the battlefield, or are they pretty much your general? So they're sending their troops on, and it's just uh, or it's just a character that you pick with the debuffs, etc., but does not necessarily have to also have a specific attacks, etc. That's also something to consider, because if we go that road, then it's easier to do, but also it means it does not need to mess too much with the meta of the game. It would definitely change things up, but not as much as if on top of the debuffs, it's also going into the battlefield. Because if you think about it, as opposed to the artifacts, right now, if you are using uh, a buff with your artifacts, it's going on for the entire battle, regardless of how many units are left in there. If your hero is an actual unit on the battlefield, this means one of the new strategy for players will be to take down that hero first at whatever cost, to kill the debuffs of your opponent and then go for it. So that's a new type of strategy you need to build up. Uh, but that changes the strategy of the game a lot more. If this new unit is something that is visible in the on the in the game, but is not acting directly on the battlefield, then it could make it less in. It would change the meta less, basically. So that's something we can think of as well. If, as Josif was mentioning, if we're a bit too worried that it gets too complicated for the gameplay. In any case, what I would suggest if we go something like this is to make sure that it only happens when you are at rank 16 or something like that, like not before, when you already have an understanding of the game. I think I missed one comment from Josif as well. Doing the Twisted Curse event uh, for all units, that would be too much. Yeah, and I don't know if I understood your question the proper way, but the curse event, if we were to do it for all the units, I can tell you already that it would not be possible, because that means you have a team that will just spend their entire time on this. Hey, Trucer, welcome to the stream. I don't know what you're posting, but if you want us to react to what you're saying, you will need to ask your questions in English, even if you're using a translator or something like this, because otherwise we won't really have a way to understand what's going on in here. Sorry. I mean, I'm checking right now, with just Google Translate to see what you are saying, so I can answer to you a little. Yeah. In the meantime, I don't know, guys, if you have any other question, any other points that you want to talk about. Because if you do, that would be the good time to ask. Because I think we're gonna get close to the end quite quickly. So I see from what I hear, from what I'm reading here, Gustav, that you're asking pretty much what's up with the game and what has been happening lately. Because I see that you're asking about the global red boss and the boss and what's going on there. Just as I was saying earlier, the global red boss at the moment is still a beta event, so it's very not yet ready to be what it's supposed to be. But that's definitely something we want to expand on, and it has to become better for sure for players to fully understand and fully benefit from that event. That's a given, and we know it's gonna come, but it's taking some iterations to really get it going the way it should. That's for sure. Okay, so then, yes, if you were rephrasing your question, you suggest more events like those events that all units will have the chance to be buffed for a short period. Yeah, I mean, we could have this event run more often. What will most likely happen anyway is that the next ones will have more units in them. That's a possibility. I do not know yet if we want to have them to happen too often, because the thing as well is that what works well with this event right now is that it happens really at the end of the era, at a point where it's not really hurting anyone. So we we would have to get more feedback to see if people would actually enjoy the event if it was happening um, at a different time. Right, that's something we need to check for sure. Madram, are you asking if we are going to revamp the artifact progression? Does that affect the merchant concept? No, the merchant concept is pretty much still alive. We're just facing some technical difficulties with putting well, going from the concept to the actual realization, but we're working on it, and it's still planned to be there this year anyway. The merchant shouldn't be affected because the merchant is not going to be a 24/7 merchant. It's not going to be there at any given time, and it's not always going to give you the offers you would want. So it's the merchant system is something that players will benefit from time to time, because there will be the offer that they want when the event is there. Sometimes they will make a trade that is not super great, but because they need one specific resource at one given time, and they will go for it. And sometimes they will not take their chance because the offers are not interesting for them. I'm giving you an example, but if you already have all your artifacts maxed out, maybe you're not that interested in getting premium keys, for example. So if the merchant shows up and one of the offer is premium keys, you probably won't be going for that one, even if the ratio is potentially interesting for whatever is asked in return. The other way around, you have people that are in extreme shortage of gold all the time. Maybe they will be interested in giving out gold for, I don't know, elixirs or anything that they personally are not using as much, or power stones, power stones that they don't use, and they want to exchange those ones against gold that they could use right away. Some people would be interested. So that's the way the merchant works. Is that it will be an event. Let's say, like, it runs for 3 days. It shows you some offers, and every X hours, those 3 or 5 offers or whatever are changing. Right. So every 3 hours or every 5 hours, you have new offers. And if you're not happy with the offers that are presented to you and you don't want to wait, you can also skip them using some gems. This way, it's a feature that also benefits the game economy, and that allows you to get rid of technically any resource in the game that you are not using. So you want to get rid of I don't know, unit shard of one specific unit because you have tons of it, and you're never going to update this unit, but you need, I don't know, you need elixirs because your clan is fighting hard against the boss right now and you need the elixirs, and there's a deal to exchange shards for elixirs, and you decide to go for it. That's the kind of thing that will happen. And then the ratios will not always be great. The system of such a merchant, I'm not sure that it's the first one that introduced them, probably not, but the earliest memories I have of that would be in Diablo. In the very first Diablo, you had this seller that was basically offering you super weird weapons near the entry of the dungeon against, some. Uh, I don't remember what was the sacrifice you had to give, but the idea was some of those weapons were amazing. Some of those weapons were absolute shit, and it was the concept of saying every time it shows up, every time you start a run, you see if this is interesting for you. And that's the kind of same system with the merchant. Like in any RPGs, sometimes the offers will not be great for you, sometimes they will. This concept is still going to be there regardless of the artifacts revamp. It's not going to change this, because technically the reason why it's interesting for us as a company is that it allows players to use the resources that they're keeping at the moment. And that's something that is interesting for us, because we want people to use their resources in the game. The more people use their resources in the game, the more they have a reason to go chase those resources again. So some of them will do purchases, most of them will just go and play the game a bit more than they usually do, because they will end up in shortage of another resource that they had plenty of before. And that's how you recreate more engagement within the game. So the events that we're doing on the weekends lately, this merchant concept, it's all going in this direction of saying, look at the Eternite. The idea with Eternite was like, hey, players have way too big stocks of Eternites right now, which prevents us from releasing too much Eternite content, because it would basically be given out to players. So what did we do? We had those discount on Eternite wardrobes, and we included a new wardrobes with content that was not there for Eternite before. People spent an insane amount of Eternites this past weekend, but that's super cool, because that means now people can chase Eternite again, and they know that such an offer will come back at one point. So they will also stack up their Eternite, but we're no more stuck into the system where we just had too much Eternite in the game and we didn't know what to do about it. So that's what we are usually doing there. We have just 2 players left, guys. So I'm wondering if you have any further questions that I could answer to before we end today's stream. Also, that allowed me to drink a little, because I was getting I was getting a bit thirsty. Well, not thirsty, but just my mouth was getting dry. By speaking too much. Am I gonna finish on some victories? Yes, it seems like it. Great. Yosef, you're saying those events were dope. Well done. We want more tonight events like the ones and with other skin than those pretty new. Uh, yeah, I mean, as I said, this event will return. That's for sure. How often? That's still to be determined, because we also need people to be able to pack up a bit of those of the Eternite back, right? Before we run it. If we were to run it too often, people would feel like we're just basically asking them to buy Eternites a bit too much, right? Technically, it's also what's going to happen the next time we run it. For sure, some people will feel like it's the right time to buy some Eternites, and that's okay. That's part of the deal. But we want to make sure we also do it when people have stacked up bits of Eternite. So this event, I wouldn't expect to see it more than once per era, or even once every 2 eras or something like this. Because if we were to run it like every other week, it would not work out, because people don't have the time to get the Eternite they need in the meantime. Okay, folks, do you have any final wish, any final question to ask? Because we have finished this fight night. I'm going to be closing the event so you all get your rewards right away. That is done. And so now it's all about thanking you guys for joining. Sorry again for the hiccup at the beginning of the stream. That's definitely a rookie mistake I did there. But lucky that you guys found your way, and we will see each other anyway in 2 weeks since I don't see any further question. Yeah, all your other questions are too obscure, Matrema. Okay, that's that's some teasing. It's creating a lot of anticipation for the next time. Well, share with us your obscure questions the next time. But in this case, please send me the list of questions beforehand so that I can have some answers ready for you. Cool. Anyway, thank you guys for joining this stream. Have a wonderful evening, and we'll talk to each other in 2 weeks. Thank you. Bye.